Today is Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019. It is 4 p.m. We're in the city chambers. I call Solid Waste District meeting to order. Those present with me are Commissioner Luke, Vice Mayor McDowell, myself, Mayor Hanks, Commissioner Carasone, Commissioner Emmerich, got City Manager Lear, City Attorney Slayton. Recording Secretary today is Ms. Reed, and Ms. Taylor is our clerk. Our chief is back there somewhere. Up there he is. He's waving at me. And then we have, of course, staff. So all is well here. Just a couple of reminders. If you have a public comment, your cards are right over here. Just fill those out, give them to the officer, and he'll pass them down to us. If you have a phone, a cell phone, please turn it off or put it on vibrate. If you would, let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll entertain an approval of the agenda.
Move it, but I don't have any buttons.
Let me try.
I can speak, but I can't make a motion. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented for solid waste.
I'll second.
I have a motion on the floor by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Let us take a vote by voice. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. And that passes. Do we have any
Okay,
public
now I have
comment?
it.
Oh, do we have any public comment?
No, for solid waste, Mayor.
Okay, wonderful. Move on to consent. Entertain a motion to approve the consent.
Is anything pulled, Mayor?
Yeah, I don't know. Has anything pulled? City manager, is anything pulled for the consent?
No, sir.
Make a motion to approve consent agenda as presented.
A second,
Have a motion on the floor.
because I heard the Weedo was going to be pulled.
That's on the next meeting.
Am I on the wrong one?
Yep.
Darn it.
So we have a motion on the floor by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Let's take a vote. Mine won't let me push yes. Yeah, mine won't let me push it. Let me, mine locked up. Hold on a second.
You say yes?
Yeah, I say yes. But mine locked up.
4-0.
So that did pass? Okay. 4-0. All right. Now I'm good. And Carasone is stepped out of the room. All right. Vice Mayor, we didn't get any other public comments since that long meeting. So we will move on to adjournment. This meeting is adjourned.
I couldn't do still says commission regular meeting.
I didn't print out the other
refresh.
one. That's why I thought I was on this one.
They is telling me to leave the solid waste.
Well, no, it's asking you if you want to. We're actually going to the next one.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
No, now I'm on solid waste.
Now you want to go to R&D.
Right.
Tell me when we're ready, ladies. Okay.
Fisher.
Okay, welcome this afternoon. Today is Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019. It is 4:04 p.m. We're in the city chambers, and I call the Commission Road and Drainage District meeting to order. Those present with me are Commissioner Luke, Vice Mayor McDowell, myself, Mayor Hanks, Commissioner Carasone, Commissioner Emmerich. We have City Manager Lear, City Attorney Slayton, Deputy Clerk Taylor, and our recording secretary today is Ms. Reed, and our Chief of Police is back there, Todd Garrison. A couple of reminders. Turn off your phones or please put them on vibrate, and if you have a public comment card, please put them in over here to my left, your right. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved, Mayor.
And second.
On the floor by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Let's take a vote.
I don't have my voting thing.
No?
Yep.
Don't worry, Jonathan, I got that, buddy. All right, that passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to public comment. Vice Mayor, okay. Mr. Limpart, if you would please, right down here, and state your name for the record.
Martin Lumpert, Northport Estate. You spent $1.5 million for maintenance of Sumter Boulevard. The cutting with those little mowers worse than the golf course. But for us in the state area, we don't have any maintenance or beautification like you have for the rest of city south of I-75. Our beautification is a wheat growing 8 foot tall and big bill for road and drainage department. Per family, Northport Estate pay the highest taxes for roads and drainage, and service is nothing. I think I was here before. I was live 5 times by roads and drainage. They're gonna do something. It's not. If you commission gonna do, it have to be done or cut the taxes off. That's one thing or the other. I don't want to pay taxes for no service whatsoever. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. We're going to move on to consent agenda. City Manager, do we have anything pulled for discussion?
Yes, sir. Item B was requested to be pulled.
B.
Yes, B as in boy.
Motion to approve the agenda, item B.
Accept consent agenda item A, C, and D.
Second that if Commissioner Luke would press her button.
Motion on the floor
Back off.
by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Vice Mayor McDowell. Let's take a vote.
Back off again.
And that passes unanimously. Item B, award request bid for 2019-33 to Weedo Greenboat, Inc. for an amphibious vehicle for an estimated total cost of $253,214. City Manager, do you have an introduction for this?
Thank you, Mayor. I have Public Works staff here to enter this, or to answer any questions you have. This is for the amphibious vehicle that was approved in the budget. As affectionately referred to as the Weedo amphibious vehicle. And that will open it up for questions, though.
Okay. I have nothing reading here. Commissioner McDowell?
Yeah, I do have a couple questions regarding this. How will this actually benefit the city? If maybe you or staff could let me know, because we use an airboat, and I'm just curious, what will this do?
All right, I mean, we can go through this. We went through it during the budget process, but we're more than willing to, Chuck Speak can go through the details of it again.
I'd
Chuck Speak,
appreciate it.
Operations Maintenance Manager.
Just says request to speak.
What this boat or this amphibious platform will allow us to do, it will allow us to access areas that we can access, that we cannot access with an airboat. Airboat is limited in what it can do based on, airboats don't have reverse. Airboats need an area to turn around. Airboats don't have an articulating arm that we can put attachments on to dig or cut or move debris or brush. So this unit will give us that capability to get into some of these areas in the canals where we really have no other access. The only other access we would have is to take the easements between the lot lines and go back and start clearing the right-of-way behind the houses, taking all the trees out to access that area.
Since this amphibious vehicle is going to be used to help with the growth in the water and growth over the water so you can get more access, will that help with the amount of chemicals that are being sprayed into the canals? Will we be able to reduce the amount of chemicals?
I can't guarantee that we'll be able to reduce the amount of chemicals. I'm always looking for ways to be more efficient, both due to the cost and to limit the chemical use. I can't guarantee that this piece of equipment will do that. I can guarantee that it will help us remove that impinging growth from the banks mechanically and not chemically.
That next year's budget, we'll see quite a bit less money used on chemicals now that we're investing in this piece of equipment that can do so much more than, like you just said, the airboat can.
Excuse me, Vice Mayor, if I may, I would ask Mr. Chuck to perform an analysis of that, similar to how he did when we came before the commission in these budget workshops. With the spraying, he's reduced the upcoming fiscal year 2020 budget by 25% with his use of chemicals, but that was done through efficiencies and making improvements to reduce the chemical usage. So that's going to be the same way with the amphibious work platform. Based on what is accomplished and efficiencies through the additional piece of equipment, he'll be able to come up with a determination if he can reduce the chemical usage. But just to say that we're going to do that, we don't know that at this time. So I would just ask that he be permitted to perform an analysis, monitor his staff's operations, and then he can more accurately let us know and the commission know if he is able to do that.
I would love to get a consensus to take a look at that at the next budget cycle, absolutely. I mean, we're investing in this equipment, let's see how well it's doing and how well it's performing and how it's reducing the chemicals that are being used. So yeah, I would love to get a consensus to make sure that staff does that.
Commissioner Luke?
I'm good.
Commissioner Carusone?
Yes.
Commissioner Emmerich? Yeah, there you go. There's your consensus.
Okay, and if I can clarify, again, we can't say that this piece of equipment is specifically bought to reduce the herbicide use. This is to access places that we have no way to access now and to do job functions that we just don't have equipment to do right now. This is going to allow that access. It will likely have an impact on the herbicide use in that budget. We may find as we open up some more of these canals that we haven't been able to get into because they're grown together, that we have to use more herbicide now because there's more areas that we can treat. There are areas out east that are completely blocked that we can't get into. So this piece of equipment will allow us access to those areas. So it will be, maybe the first year will be difficult, but if we track it over the next few, then likely we'll see a difference.
Which brings me to my next question. What's the plan? I mean, you're buying a big, expensive piece of equipment. Is there a plan to do these canals in this area first? I mean, what exactly is the plan to try and get a good handle on this?
We have a pretty good idea of where we cannot access with the airboats, again, because we're out there all the time. Those areas will be identified. They'll be put together as far as importance. And when I say importance is what areas they impact. So if I have one that's way out east that there's no houses around, of course, that's going to be at the bottom of my list. The ones closer into town, more populated areas, will be the first ones we go in to start to clear. Likely this machine's going to take us 10 to 12 months to build. So we're...
Build the machine?
Yes, ma'am.
It said it'll be delivered in 120 days.
I would be shocked.
Well, that's what the contract says, sir.
Okay, I'm telling you, these are specialized pieces of equipment that take time to build.
Wait a minute. It says here, lead time required for delivery of vehicle is 112 calendar days. If that's not going to be fulfilled, well, then the contract is not accurate.
If that's what it says, then I'm sure that's what they'll do.
Do we have to build it once we receive the
No,
parts?
ma'am.
Is that what you're implying?
No. It comes ready to go.
Okay. But you're not convinced it's going to be ready to go in, 3 months?
I am hoping for the
6
best.
months?
Hoping for the best. I would like it to be here tomorrow, but we're not to that point.
Will this amphibious vehicle be used in the Myakkahatchee Creek?
Possibly.
Right, that's all the questions I
Commissioner
have.
Carusone?
Yeah, what happens if they do go beyond 112 days or whatever it is that they have to deliver, 120 days to deliver?
That would be a procurement question. I'm not sure
Okay,
the
so
answer
who
to that.
answers that?
Trying to find the provision in the contract right now.
Thank you.
If you have others, it'd probably be good to go on because
Oh, I don't have any others. I just brought that up because that's a very good question. If we think it's gonna go beyond 120 days, then
What happens?
there should be a provision in there that says they didn't, you know, it's just like any other contract. If they don't successfully implement what they promised, there should be a penalty. So, that's all.
Like a Domino's pizza.
That's right.
Over 30 minutes, you get it free.
Yeah, and you get it for free.
And they
I like
have
it.
moved their, they do have a local distributor now in Florida, when I say local, whereas before they were based out of Germany. So that may have increased
Probably
their
still get
turnaround
it from
time.
Germany, it just comes as a shell to the local Florida, and then they have to put it all together, but it did bring up a good point, is that regardless of what your belief is versus what their promise is, you know, where is the holding them accountable for if it does go beyond the 120 days?
Yeah, Commissioner McDowell, did you have something over?
No, I'm ready for a motion, so
Um,
I'm just waiting for that.
I noticed too that it says that if we want to do a stainless steel upgrade, it would be additional money of $34,000. What is the pros and cons of having the stainless steel versus whatever this is made out? What is it made out of?
The stainless steel upgrade is actually just for stainless steel fasteners. So all of your bolts would be stainless steel. I had the same question when they sent the quote and spoke to the manufacturer. That option is for when it's used in a marine environment.
A marine
A
environment?
marine environment meaning salt water, not
Oh,
fresh water.
thank you. How will that affect any areas that are brackish?
We don't intend to put it in brackish water.
Thank you.
I appreciate your wisdom in making.
violation.
City manager, did you find anything?
I guess what I'm trying to get at, if this doesn't have a provision that they don't have to, you know, some sort of accountability if it's not delivered on time, then I can't vote for it. So, it's pretty important. Not that maybe others will, but I think unless there's some sort of a guarantee, it concerns me.
If you're looking for a penalty in there, I don't see one, but purchasing is just walking in. It does say that they have a lead time of 112 days, but it doesn't have a provision in there for what happens if they don't, other than they're in violation of the contract.
Afternoon, everybody. Commission, Justin Daly, Contract Administrator, Finance Department. On, let's see, Tech Spec 3, or,
Say what?
let's see here, hold on a minute. Yeah, Technical Specification 3, Delivery, on page 18 of the request for bid. It says, all bids will indicate the lead time required for the established quantities to be delivered. Failure to meet delivery or lead time necessitating the city to make purchases from other sources shall cause, excuse me, got a tickle in my throat, shall cause successful bidder to be held liable for the difference of cost between award bid priced and the cost of the required purchase from another source.
And that's part of the contract? or-
That is.
Awesome. See, where were you 20 minutes ago?
Watching from the bleachers.
I'm not kidding. I'm only kidding. Thank you.
And there is some additional details, like I said, on delivery there as well, regarding contacting us, coordinating with them for delivery and everything else, so.
Awesome. Good job.
Commissioner McDowell?
But that's saying that if they don't deliver in the 112 days, and let's say they do go to that 1 year that Mr. Speak was talking about, there is really no other supplier for this piece of equipment based on what we're looking for it to do, correct?
Well, there are some other options out there. We did receive one other non-responsive bid pursuant to it because I failed to, if I recall, complete all of the forms. Let's see here. Yeah, they failed to complete all of the bid forms. So there is one other option out there that we could potentially consider that was submitted. Obviously, that doesn't exclude other potential options out there for vehicles that might still serve some of the same purposes. So I do think if we have to run down that road, we could always look at some of the other options or go to Mobitrack to determine what their offerings truly are and whether they're going to suit the needs.
I'm not convinced that that provision really protects us. Because we have to go through and buy another vehicle from somewhere else.
Well, but
Yeah, but they're held liable.
they would be,
Difference.
yes, they would be liable for the difference of whatever is then associated
But
with.
meanwhile, we aren't able to do the work that we're purchasing this machine to do.
Yes, you wouldn't have the vehicle. There was not liquidated damages included in this.
Okay.
Nobody else? Entertain a motion.
All right, move to approve consent agenda item B for the 2019-33 Rito Greenboat.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Commissioner Carasone. Anything to that, Commissioner Luke?
No, just again, thank you for the decisions that you made for this particular one. Thank you.
Carasone? All right, let's take a vote. That approves unanimously. Thank you.
Good job.
All right, we'll move on to public hearings. Resolution number 2019-R06, a resolution for the City Commission of the City of Northport, Florida, adopting the Sarasota County Program for Public Information. City Manager, will you please introduce the item? Huh? Oh, sorry. City Clerk, will you read the
Yes.
resolution by title only?
Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Northport, Florida, adopting the Sarasota County Program for Public Information, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. This resolution is for us to participate in the public information sharing with Sarasota County, help increase our points in the CRS rating to allow flood insurance discounts to be higher. I have Ms. Elizabeth Wong here, who's been kind of spearheading this for us, if you have any questions on it. If not, we'll turn it back over to you.
Have any questions on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
To approve resolution number 2019-R-06.
I'll second.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Commissioner Emmerich. Anything to that, Commissioner Luke?
Ms. Wong, for what you do, this is tremendous savings for a lot of our people. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much.
That was it.
Short and sweet,
Great
sir.
presentation, thank you.
Yes, it was awesome.
Thank you.
Almost as good as Rick's.
Yes, take the vote. And that passes. General business. A report on the installation of Sand Hill Crane area signs at 6 locations on Panacea Boulevard for a total cost of $900. City Manager, introduce the item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Back in February, the commission directed staff to work with the Northport Friends of the Wildlife, install some Sand Hill Crane area signs. We have done that. This report shows you where and how many. We installed 6 of them. Cost was approximately $900. We just wanted to provide that report because you directed us to bring it back to you. So you have the report, and that's it.
Thank you very much. All right, we have a questioner, Commissioner McDowell.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have questions. I was waiting for comment. I apologize.
Well, there's no motion to be made, so,
Oh, there's no motion?
no, it was just to bring us information.
Oh,
There's your information.
okay, so I guess I can make a comment then.
Make your comment.
I just want to say thank you to the citizens involved, Northport Friends of Wildlife. This is truly one of those opportunities where a citizen's initiative makes a huge difference. And it can be done. with an idea that a citizen brings forth to us. So thank you to everybody involved, and I am grateful. Thank you.
Actually, I do want to make a motion that we proceed with what staff has presented to us. We asked them to bring it back, and they have, and they've found the places, the signage, and the amount of money. So I would like to make a motion that we approve what,
There's no need to. That's what they're going to do.
I don't know as they were directed to actually go ahead and do it. I think they were supposed to be bringing it back.
City manager, all I have here is for informational purposes.
We don't need the direction to install signs. That's just part of our day-to-day jobs. We were directed to bring back a report on this, which is
Right.
what we've done. Unless you don't want us to install the signs, we're going to install the signs.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again to the citizens and Northport Friends of Wildlife.
All right. Do I have any other public comment, Vice Mayor?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay. And with that, we are adjourned until 5 o'clock for time certain.
Can we keep this pace going?
Well, I've already asked, does all of this have to be time certain, or can I pull stuff out and put in the spots where,
501.
oh, yeah, 501, and then we have the 6. Yeah, that's why I was wondering, like, is there anything in there that
Almost 5:01?
What?
I gotta wait till 5:01.
But I don't know.
Somebody who's been there with that comment minutes.
Good afternoon. Welcome. Today is Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019. It is 5:01 p.m. We are in the city chambers. I call the Commission Road and Drainage District meeting to order. Those present with me are Commissioner Luke, Commissioner McDowell, myself, Commissioner Hanks, Commissioner Carasone, Commissioner Emmerich. We have City Manager Lear, City Attorney Slayton, City Clerk Taylor. We have our Recording Secretary, Ms. Reed, is here. We also have our Chief of Police there in the back, Chief Garrison, and along with staff. And Chief Garrison is in the back, along with staff, and we have a lot of great faces here today. We thank you for coming. We encourage all the public comments, or all the public comments, and all the public. You guys showing up is really good. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Okay, just a couple of reminders. If you do have a public comment card, those are done right there. And you will fill those out and give those to the police officer, and they will send that down to us. We do have public comment in the beginning and at the end, so if you don't do it now, you do have a chance at the end to do so. Also, please remember to turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate. And let's go ahead and we'll just say the pledge. Well, it's not on there, but I was thinking we already did. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I can get an approval of the agenda, please.
So move, Mayor.
And second?
Motion on the floor by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Let's take a vote. That passes unanimously. We'll move on to public comment. Vice Mayor?
Do you want to do public comment now, or do you want to wait till presentation?
No, we're going to do it now.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, I will call off 3 names. If you would, just kind of line up here, because we have a lot of these, so we want to kind of be able to move it along a little bit. But I'm looking for Miss Natalie Lau, Diane Enos, and Greg Cooley.
You want to show her where the mic's at, please?
Right here. Sorry. And please state your name for the record.
My first name Natalie, my last name Lau.
Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Go ahead and speak.
Oh, I have no comment.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Hey, good seeing you. Come on back.
Your comments.
All right, she has set the pace.
Oh, no.
Go
My
ahead.
name is Diane Ennis. My husband and I first came to Northport to look for a home here about 3 years ago. And we were very impressed with your town. We felt it was beautiful here, and we did eventually find a home here. And we moved out to the southeast corner of Northport. But over the last 2 years, our roads are in very deplorable condition. And we had inquired about it, I think a year or so ago, to the Public Works Department, I believe, and they told us that you had floated another bond and that we could expect that our roads would be repaired shortly within that year, by the end of that year, I think. Well, I'm here to say that that hasn't happened for us, and we feel very forgotten out there. I brought pictures of what our roads look like right now, and you can see that my home is in the background there. Oh, you can see that my home is in the background of those pictures. And it's right off Veterans Highway, out in the, almost to Kings Highway, I guess. I'm sort of still new here. So out to Kings Highway almost. And it's pretty bad. So I want to make you aware of it, and I'm wondering what it is that you can do to expedite something changing in our area. There aren't very many residents. We're mostly woods out there, or whatever, jungle, whatever you want to call it. But we do have a lot of traffic on our roads, and we have a lot of big trucks, and it is awful. So I go sit down and wait?
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
can we have city manager or staff get with our citizen because we haven't floated any other bonds?
No, there's not another bond so I'm not sure what that statement relates to, but Jason Yarborough, our assistant city manager, is coming down to get her information right now, so we'll right behind you coming down the hall.
Chat with her.
Like Activity Center 6 area, so, thank you.
It's just a bunch of mumbling.
Okay, thank you. We will try to speak up. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Coley, go ahead.
Greg Hewley. This letter indicates my personal property taxes for road and drainage are going to go up 34% if adopted. And this 34% increase is above and beyond the other proposed property tax increases recently announced in the newspaper. For all you taxpayers in the audience, did you know this commission wants to raise most of your line item city property taxes? They want to increase the millage rate by 25%, solid waste by 8%, fire and district by 10%, and now road and drainage by 34% in 1 year. Yet for comparison, recent newspaper reports state Sarasota and Lee counties, plus the cities of Venice and Cape Coral, are not raising their base millage rates at all. They get their tax rates raised from the higher assessment values, as should Northport. If all this is true, the Northport portion of my personal taxes are going to go up well over 20%, or about $250, which includes the increased assessment amount. My question to all you taxpayers, did your wages go up 20% that last year? Can you afford an additional $200+ in Northport property taxes this year? And why does Northport require so much taxation when our surrounding communities hold the line on taxes? Yet I tried to be more informed. I did attend a session of last week's city budget workshop. What I heard, the city has 700 employees to service 67,000 people. That's a ratio of 95 to 1. For comparison, the Florida League of City average for a city this size is 112 to 1. At a 112 to 1 ratio, Northport is currently overstaffed by about 100 city employees at a cost to taxpayers somewhere between $7 and $8 million a year. They discussed higher salary increases, a higher salary justification for these 700 employees. And I heard talk about payments for consultant studies in the tens of thousands of dollars that produced nothing but suspect information. What I did not hear, no major projects or substantial increases in the level of city services provided to us residents, and no unmanageable city debt or the city is near bankruptcy. So where's this all going? The only conclusion I could draw is that this city has a serious spending problem and not a revenue problem, and most of the spending is being driven by this overstaffing under this city manager, Mr. Lear. And expecting us to pay another 20% more in taxes for this spending is outrageous and fiscally irresponsible. Many of us probably cannot afford this tax increase. And for all you voters in the audience, 3 of these seats come up for election this year, so remember that. I will leave you all with a final thought. Can all you afford in Northport to pay up to $200 more in property taxes this year? Then how much more will it be next year? Commissioners, stop all this taxing us property owners to the poorhouse. We cannot afford this proposed budget.
Thank you. I will clear the room if we do that. I will clear the room. We have to move on. I will say that our city is not about bankrupt. We are one of the most financially secure cities in the country right now by ratings. We did save over $5.5 million out of the budget, was saved out of the budget. But we are one of the lowest tax communities in our region. So, well, I've got the documents to show it. Ron Hutch, Dan Stinkler, and Craig Beal. And please state your name for the record, sir.
Dan Stensler. I've been here in Northport for 19 years, and the taxes are through the roof. I'm on Social Security disability. I'm a veteran, and we got a $20 raise this year, and you want 40 of it. It doesn't work out. And I have another issue with these meetings at 5 o'clock. People don't get off work until after 5. Why are they, how can people come to these meetings that work? It doesn't work out either. That's my comment.
Thank you. And just to remind the public, we do, every month, we have one meeting in the morning, and one meeting doesn't start till 6 every month. So we do have 2 meetings.
Statute,
Huh?
state statute for this meeting.
Yeah, and this meeting is bound by state statute to be after 5 o'clock. So that's why it was at 5:01. I had to wait that extra minute.
People who work.
You'll have to talk to the legislatures on that one, which we're happy to do for you also. Craig Beal?
My name's Craig Beal. I'm a 20-year resident of Northport Estates and a lifetime resident of Sarasota County. So I did some research, as everybody's done, and I'm looking at a 35% tax increase for the road and drainage. And it's a little bit unreasonable. I mean, I'm already being penalized because I live on 3 acres. I pay the equivalent of 3 single-family homes. So, you know, when's it going to stop? In 20 years of living on the property, I can count on one hand the times road drainage has been down my street. So I don't have sidewalks, don't have street lights. I mow the right-of-way on 2 lots, and so not getting a lot of service. And I was really happy when I heard about the bike trail that might go down Tropicare, but I guess that went by the wayside. So anyway, I've been involved in this thing since 2007 when it first got enacted, and I complained then that, you know, people that live on acreage are being penalized, and it's not right. It's one income, any way you want to look at it, and, you know, just keeps going up and up and up. So hopefully we'll get a grip on it.
Thank you, sir.
Can we,
go ahead.
Mayor, can we just clarify, the bike lane, the bike path didn't go by the wayside, we pushed it out by a year because we need to find the funding source for it, so it's not gone,
Just delayed.
it's just delayed.
Have a Ron Houch. Right up here, sir. And then after that, I have Hayes and Mr. Limpart, and I guess your wife also, Miss Limpart. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. I'm Ron Hauk. I've moved here approximately a year and a half ago. Like the air situation you have here. Bike trail was another one that was a situation that a lot of people didn't do. We were here for that. That was questionable, so I'm just sort of getting the feel of how things roll here with taxes and whatnot. As far as the increase of this drainage, I only have a 1/4 acre lot. They go through, it's nothing. So are these other people have more property than I, have a little bit more concern about it? So I'm just watching how things go. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We're very glad that you're involved. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susan Hayes, and I have a couple of questions for you. First of all, you just put in sidewalks on my street about a year and a half ago, but there are no culverts. It seems to me that looking to put the culverts in now is kind of putting the cart before the horse. Why were the culverts not put in first and then the sidewalks? The other question I've got is you go down Sumter on any time we have a big rainstorm, and the culverts are higher than the water level that is flowing toward the culverts. So how are you going to drain off the culverts? Sumter is half the time underwater. So it seems to me that there should be somebody in the town who is responsible for checking with the construction companies that put those culverts in so that they know that they're being done properly and that the water is going to be drained off in a reasonable amount of time. 72 hours is not a reasonable amount of time.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. I believe our Assistant City Manager, Jason, is coming down to speak to you.
I've already spoken with her.
Okay.
Jason's not here.
Go ahead, Mr. Lumpert.
Martin Lumpert, Northport Estate. That bill come out, your proposal for taxes for road and drainage, there should be more explain exactly what they're gonna do for that money. And when it come questionable is primary drainage. Why do we have to be charged? That should be charged equal for everybody, because those is mostly on the south side of I-75, and that water is used for city to pump for drinking water. What that got to do with us in Northport Estate? And even secondary drainage. You charge me for the street and back drainage 3 times. It's kind of agree on it when it's on your property, but when something else is 20 miles away and you are paying for water is trickling down underground from everybody else, from this restricted area, same thing, but they pay same thing, but we don't know. And when you include the mowing, you put inside underneath the drainage. Now you do not know if it's going to be mowed or not. The way I have experience with the drainage department, they don't mow. I'm paying taxes for 1.5 years, and drainage in my backyard is 8 feet tall wheat growing inside. Last time I was here, or 2 years ago, was waiting for equipment to come. They cut it once. Apparently that equipment disappeared, or what happened with that equipment? Are they waiting for another equipment to come to cut again? You should check it and straighten up the drainage department to be more active, to be responsible for doing what they should be paying for. I don't think so you're gonna pay me just like that, give me a check and say, oh, I do the job for you, and I never show up. If I will do that in my business, I will be in jail the way you do it. And you are still sitting up there. Thank you.
Ms. Lumpert?
Natalia Lumpert, Northport Estate. You send us a frequently asked questions, and inside it says, in 1985, the City Commission adopted ordinance number 85-193, creating a road maintenance and drainage district, name later changed to the road and drainage district. Through this district, each property owner is assessed for services, creating a financial structure to support the district. But the city is neglected that the same ordinance, number 85-193, says the specific purpose in creating this municipal service assessment and benefit district is to provide for roads, alleys, sidewalks, road lighting, road signs, road markings, drainage culverts, and drainage structures attendant thereto, and the maintenance thereof, subject to and subsequent to the dedication and acceptance by the city of the initial construction work by developers from revenues collected by special assessment within such district. City accepted all the roads from GDC for the maintenance, yet you choose and pick which maintenance you will perform and which one the individual homeowners have to do. And you discriminated against the undeveloped properties, owners of undeveloped properties, and the owners of developed. Northport Estates, all 3 of subdivisions, have 857 lots. which means 857 lots in a state are the only ones affected by EDU per acreage. 1% of residential lot owners in the city are paying 3 to 10 times more than the owner of a standard lot, which are approximately 84,000 of them. The road and drainage network benefits all the property owners. Drainage in the state benefits all properties down the stream. The estate's family should not be overtaxed just because we have acreage lots, when the owners of large tracts pay for the drainage portion the same amount as a quarter-acre lot.
Thank you, Ms. Limpert.
Okay.
Andrew DeJoy, David Dillon, and Cindy Garber.
Hi, Manager DeJoy. Hello, everybody. I'm just here to say a few things. I don't want to say a lot more, but I'm not going to do it. But it is a big chunk out of the budget every year, you know. I'm worried about this bill coming in November every year, you know. I got to save up for it, medical bills, whatever. It's a big chunk out of the budget, okay? I'm sure everybody agrees. It depends on how, hey, if you make 200 grand a year, it's nothing. But you got people that average. I'm retired. Thank God I get a 2.6% increase every year. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to live here. You know, I have to go back to wherever, you know. I have to go back to Lehigh Acres. Don't want to do that. So other than that, which includes a lot, I just want to know that, I mean, I know there's things we have to do here. I don't know if we're trying to make this place Manhattan. I don't think we need to be in the competition with Sarasota or Punta Gorda. So slow it down a little bit, you know, because you know, you can go as high as, you know, your imagination, but you got to stop and think, you know. I mean, you guys look like you're doing fine, but you got to really think. Everybody, you know, you look around by 41 and you see houses there, and, you know, people could use the money to fix up their houses. You could see it, you know. And there's a lot more, you know. I'm a bike rider. I see everything, and it's all in here. And I don't know if anybody else sees it, but that's basically it. Not really, but there's two more things. So I know you guys want to improve everything, and that's cool. You know, you got to build roads and this and that. But is there anybody in you that try to hold the cost down? Do you have like a Republican in this thing here, and they try to hold the cost down? Or does everybody just say, you know, well, yeah, let's go build a Ferris wheel, you know, and, oh, yeah, all right. Is there somebody, do you fight amongst each other to help the people? Or do you just bring something up and just put it on, and that's it, and then it's in my taxes the next year? I mean, how do you do that? Does somebody over here fight for us? Does everybody check each other, or is there no checking? That's very important to know, because I often wonder what goes on, you know? What else? So one more thing, I see they did a good job on 41. It took them enough time, you know, but they did a good job. It's quality work, it's a good job, it looks beautiful. Like I said, it took them enough time.
Thank you, Mr.
But it is nice, and the bike paths are almost finished. You know, I almost crashed into a dump truck the other day, but they're almost out of there.
Thank you, Mr. DeJoy.
You know,
Thank you, Mr. DeJoy.
I'm sorry?
I said thank you.
Yeah, I wave and say hello and smile.
Yeah, your time is up.
You know, then I get alone and I say what I gotta say, you know.
Mr.
Keep it
DeJoy,
nice.
we got to move on to the others.
What's that?
We have to move on to the others.
I can't.
Your time is up.
My time is up.
Yes.
I'm not done.
I know.
I got one more thing important. The homeless, they're bringing in the Salvation Army now. That's
Thank you.
wonderful. they got a pot joint
Thank
down
you.
the street, and the
Thank you.
homeless, they're under the bridges.
Thank you.
Making a mess. Get somebody
Thank
to clean that up, because it looks
Thank you.
disgusting on 41.
Thank
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I do want to let people know that what goes on in the city isn't mutually exclusive to the city. What happens internationally affects the city. What happens nationally affects the city. Statewide affects the city. Steel tariffs on China affected us hugely. We had to hurry up and rush in our carotid cans before our last budget meeting so that we wouldn't end up paying double for those cans, which then affected that budget because we had to rush them in. Otherwise, we would have had to pay double for them. Because of our steel tariffs on China, they stopped taking our trash, right? So now we're having to pay all this extra money for the trash. And that's just the international stuff. You know, there are state things, you know, things that were mentioned concerning you know, that we have to get consultants to do things. Some things, state legislation requires us to spend $75,000 in order to even look at something, and that's the state regulations do that. I'll give you an example. The road signs on Price Boulevard, people were saying we need to lower the speed. It's just too fast. You know, the roads are too small. There's so much traffic. In order to even look at it, we had to do a study, and it was $50,000 or $75,000, however much it was. The study came back and said there's nothing you can do. So I see your frustration, and I know I'm not answering all of it, but we do have that frustration too. And so I just wanted to kind of put some more of that out there. I also want to let you know that since the recession, we have artificially been holding down our rates for the last 10 years. We have been asked, listen, we need some more, you know, we need another fire truck. You know, we need another, you know, we need a couple more police vehicles. We need another trash truck. So these are things that we artificially have been holding down. 3 years ago, when I got into office, we held back. I think we gave less than half of what was being requested. And I said then, if we keep doing this, we artificially hold it down. At some point, we're going to be at 25%. At some point, these chickens are going to come home to roost, right? So I think it's important to remember these things, that we have been holding them down. And if you look at the surrounding communities, it's important to understand the services that they provide when you look at what they're charging the populace. We do provide a lot of things that our surrounding cities don't. Like EMS is something Venice doesn't provide, but we do. And that's a heavy cost to be able to provide that EMS service to you guys. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there just a little bit more, because I know there's a lot going out there in letters and in things like that, and you're not really hearing the dialogue, you're not hearing the discussion. I will, and I'm not doing this as an advertisement, but I will be having a town hall August 12th to talk about these very things. And I know it's after this, but it's before we actually vote on the millage and all that stuff. It will be August 12th at the VFW at 6 p.m. on Trot Circle. So,
Can you add that the meetings are recorded?
And the meetings are recorded. What?
Online, right?
Yeah. And these meetings they're recorded visually and audibly online. You can watch them on YouTube. You can watch them through our website also. So, thank you.
Would
Sorry.
you
Yeah.
explain that we're nonpartisan here?
Yeah, and the office of, each one of us probably has either an affiliation or not, but the office itself is a nonpartisan office. Huh?
You can't even tell what party we.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just being realistic. Some either are or they're not.
Deal with issues and projects,
Right.
not
Exactly.
not
So
platforms.
it is a nonpartisan office. But I assure you, there is nobody up here, whether Commissioner McDowell and I, we don't agree most of the time, but I assure you, her heart is for this community, and I bet she will say the same thing about me as I would everybody else up here. We may have different ways of coming about things, but we all want what's best for this community, and we truly want what's best for you. Sir, go ahead.
Yeah, my name's David Dillon. I'm sort of new to the area, about 2 years, and I agree with a lot of the people that's been up here already. I think that's just too much of an increase all at once. I know the prices of things go up. I understand that. Of course, I'm on a fixed income. It don't go up, but I know the world does. But the only concern I have is, and I'm not really for sure, in my tax bill last year, I thought that it went up a little bit for cutting grass, which is fine if they do their job.
There ain't been nobody around my place to cut no grass. It's 3 foot tall. And what I feel that the city of Northport sees everybody else in here cutting the grass along these empty lots, and they just figure that their job will get done for them. Well, that's the wrong idea, because our taxes pay for that. And then when I call about it, it's like, well, it's on the it's in the scheduling. Okay, but that scheduling ain't no good right now during the rainy season. It might be all right during the winter. And it's like this, I'm already paying for a service I'm not getting. You're not mowing the grass. And when they do mow it, they might as well not even mow it, because it don't even look like it's been mowed. I mean, I know you don't want to hatch it down, but during the rainy season, I think you can. During the winter, no. But, you know, I like it here. I do. Everybody in this room, they don't understand taxes. I do. I come from West Virginia. It's a wonder they don't tax the air you breathe. Because they tax for your dog. They tax for any animals you have. They tax your car every year. They tax everything. If you've got a trailer, if you've got a motorcycle, if you've got a ATV, anything, they got a tax for it. And if not, they'll come up with one. But the way you're all doing it here, I'm about ready to move back. Because I can understand you need some money. But, you know, you ought to take that percentage down a little bit. And maybe do a little bit at each time. Instead of hitting everybody. I mean, on mine, it's just going to raise it $50, approximately. And really, well, is that a lot? Yeah, at one time. But you got to consider, with this new tax bill that everybody is going to now, at the end of the year, and you got to have $20,000, you know, I can't claim nothing. I can't claim your taxes every year now. So, you know, now instead of me paying $200 a year federal, I'm paying over $1,200 because I can't claim that.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon.
But I appreciate it.
City Manager, can you have somebody you and Mr. Dillon about his area and the grass?
Yes, sir.
So tall, and maybe give him some instruction on when that'll take place? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cindy Garber, and my mom purchased property east of 75. There's nothing developed there. She bought that property well over 12 years ago. 15? 30? Oh, sorry, Mom. Okay, so about 30 years ago, she purchased that property, excuse me, and so nothing has happened there. No electricity, no power, nothing is out there. And so we received the letter about taxes being raised, more so. And you know, in the letter it explained that if she doesn't pay the raise, you know, she's in fault of possibly losing that property. The raise on taxes is quite expensive, plus the property tax as well is pricey. You mentioned earlier that you were able to save $5 million. Earlier you made that comment that we're one of the best well-established counties. So if $5 million were saved, why aren't these other things being taken care of, such as mowing the lawns, maybe establishing some roads, things of that nature? And then these tax raises are quite unfair for, I think, everyone here. So that's what I would like to just share with you all. The taxes are very becoming unbearable. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And the $5 million that I said was saved, I might have said that wrong. It was pulled from the proposed budget. Our city staff pulled that out of the budget. Last year, or the way we've always done it, and this might even be some of the confusion, is that the way we've always done the budget was the commission was presented with a proposed budget. So we had 2 large meetings as opposed to 1. And we would get the proposed budget, and it was everything every department felt they wanted and needed for the departments. And so we would spend about 3 or 4 days going through that. So, and typically you can pull out a lot of stuff from that because there's just all the wants and needs, everything that everybody wants. You always put in a little higher because you expect you might get a little more if you put it in a little bit higher, I'm sure. So, but anyways, last year, we decided to ask the city manager, understanding this board, being able to read us, know what we're looking for. He had a couple of years of watching us dig through the budget. We asked him that when you bring it, go through that proposed budget, pull out everything you can so that when we see it, we want it virtually where it's going to be. So when we went through it this time, what we had to work with was thousands, not millions. And we did. We pulled out probably a couple $100,000. I know that didn't sound grand to you guys, but that was the purpose of it, was so when it came to us, it was already practically ready, and then we could just nitpick through it. So I might have misstated the way I said that, but that's kind of the way the process was. Thank you. Okay, is that everything, Vice Mayor?
I do not show any more public comment cards.
All right. We are going to move on to our public hearing. Resolution 2019 R13. City Clerk, will you please read the resolution by title only?
A resolution of the City of Northport, Florida, providing for the adoption of non-ad valorem assessment methodology and adoption of assessment rates, providing for findings, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. City Manager, will you introduce the item?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this resolution is to adopt the methodology and the rates for the Road and Drainage District. We've been actually meeting on this since last fiscal year. We started a methodology process last year. The commission got one that they didn't agree with. There was a lot of public comment, a lot of change and questions were asked. We started the process earlier in this fiscal year for the upcoming budget. We've had multiple meetings, multiple input from the citizens, from the commission to get us to where we are today, so that you could have a methodology that many people have had input on and adjustments to. And we believe this is the methodology that we've been going back and forth with, like I say, with the commission and the public. If you'd like, we do have a presentation we can go through, but I'll leave that up to you all.
Yeah, I think we should with the public we have here. It'd be great.
Okay.
For the record, Juliana Belia, Public Works Director. We have with us today our consultants from Stantec, Ms. Morgan Broche and Mr. Patrick Luce. And at this time, if Mr. Luce could please come up and provide a PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you very much. For the
Excuse
record,
me, can you hang on one second? City Manager, can you do something about the sound? Because nobody can hear, and I even have a difficult time hearing with these side ones. Is there something you guys
Yes.
can do about the sound?
We'll get the sound turned up.
I appreciate that. Not to the point where it's going to reverberate, but
Try to avoid the echo.
thank you.
Sounds like you made the adjustment already. Thank you.
how's this, Commissioner?
Oh, much better.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
All right, for the record, Patrick Luce with Stantec Consulting, and we're here today to again discuss the methodology for the Road and Drainage District Assessment. As City Manager mentioned, we've been going through this process since last fiscal year, and we've had a couple meetings already this year to really home in on how we want to approach the application of the methodology. And so we've prepared just a quick presentation to just go through the steps that we've taken and the results of the study. So just to be clear, we have a quick little overview here. We're going to talk about the Road and Drainage District, just generally the services that are provided. We'll give you all the purpose of the presentation, and then really get into the methodology and the structure, particularly what's changing relative to how it's currently be charged, because this is not a new tax. This is just an amendment to the current tax and how it is applied. And then we'll get into taking that methodology and structure and discussing what the proposed fiscal year 20 assessment rates will be. And then we'll show you some sample property impacts and open the floor for discussion. So as I mentioned, we just wanted to take a quick little tour of what the Road and Drainage District provides and the services that it it has to go through in order to provide a road and drainage network that is well maintained. And first and foremost, in order to really maintain the district, they have to have various administrative services. So you're talking about customer service, if folks want to call in and voice any discussions about the district. There's various assessment methodology expenses that are incurred on an annual basis, as well as the Sarasota County tax collector activities. And these are all just general expenses that are incurred by the district to effectively service the district itself. And this is kind of something that's applicable to all folks who benefit from the road and drainage district. Next, we have roads. And the roads services that are provided by the district really extend to the maintenance of the road network. So things like signs and signals and lights, the landscaping along the main roads such as Sumster and Toledo Blade. And really they're working with about 813 miles of roads to rehabilitate and maintain for markings and sidewalks and the bike paths throughout the city. And one of the key things for the safety is to make sure that it clears the vegetation, remove litter and dead animals, and repair the edge of pavement and fill potholes. In addition to those road services, they also provide various drainage services, again, to try and help convey stormwater throughout the city and ensure the roadways are clear of stormwater. And so they need to maintain the swales and our ditches and make sure the waterways are rehabilitated and maintained. And as a part of this, it's including the mowing of these swales and making sure that the stormwater can kind of flow through the drainage network. And so again, we're here today because we want to bring to you all the findings of our analysis that have taken the course over a few meetings, and it has extended since the prior fiscal year, but starting this year, we've had 2 workshops that we went about discussing really the history of the road and drainage district, the various services that it provides to the city, and then start opining on the different ways that we can really think about a methodology of applying an assessment. So January 7th of 2019, we had a workshop to discuss potential modifications to the road and drainage district assessment methodology. And effectively during this presentation and during this conversation that we had on January 7th, we noted to the fact that over time, the services provided by this district, or really any district, start to evolve as different challenges come about and different needs come about. And so we want to reevaluate on every few years how a methodology gets applied to an assessment to recover the cost of providing these services. And that's effectively what we're trying to do, is reshuffle the deck of sorts to understand what has changed over the past few years since the prior methodology, and how do we want to ensure that we're really maintaining it as fair and equitable assessment as possible. And so that January 7th meeting, again, we just discussed potential modifications to home in on the different services that are applied and how we can continue to enhance the equity of those, the assessment to recover the cost of those services. And from that meeting, we had a follow-up meeting with some of the feedback and direction on different approaches that we could look into. And so on April 1st, we went about with our analysis and brought them to commission to have a workshop, review and discuss the impacts of some of those potential assessment structure modifications that were agreed upon during that January 7th workshop. And we'll, in the next subsequent slides, we'll discuss more about what those modifications entail. And then today, we want to review the updated methodology and rate structure that we've agreed to since that April 1st workshop with all of the present and relevant data. And this will give us our current proposed fiscal year 20 rates that were included in the mailed public notices, and will provide some sample property impacts of those proposed rates. So again, our first meeting this year was on January 7th, and it was a lot of discussion on the current status of the road and drainage district. And so at the end of the workshop, we received the following consensus items. We wanted to continue using the existing Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation rate manual for the road methodology. And so one of the key components of an assessment is coming up with a fair basis for apportioning cost. And so we agreed to that meeting to continue using the current methodology, which is trip generation rates as are outlaid in that manual. We wanted to maintain the current drainage methodology that is applied. Again, we opined that there were no significant changes that need to be the way of applying the assessments. And then we wanted to think about the way that those administrative charges are applied. And so currently, there's an administrative charge for the road services, an administrative charge for the drainage services, and an administrative charge for the mowing services. And what we've discussed is consolidating the administrative charges and just the components of the administrative charges that are equal to every single parcel that participates or receives benefit from the road and drainage district. And lastly, we opine to absorb mowing services into road and drainage assessments. And so effectively what was discussed during that meeting is the purpose of mowing throughout the city is, one, to have a benefit to the road network where we have a clear line of sight for traffic safety, road signs, and hazards. And the other benefit is for the drainage network. And so to have cleared swales to improve the drainage network's hydraulic functionality and allow stormwater to flow through the city and convey through each system of the drainage network as efficiently as possible. And so with that direction, we started to formulate the results, conduct an analysis based upon the current budget and current properties. And so we met again on April 1st of 2019 to present the findings of those analyses. And at the end of this workshop, commission consensus was to move forward with consolidating those administrative charges and absorbing the mowing services into the road and drainage charges. And so these are the two primary changes that we're proposing for the fiscal year 20 assessment rate. And so just to provide you all some context, currently there are three main components to the assessment structure: roads, drainage, and mowing. And within each one of these services, there are subcomponents. So for roads, there's a subcomponent of an admin charge, a base charge, and an enhanced charge. And the parcels that benefit from each one of these components receive that charge. For the drainage network, there's an admin charge, a primary charge, a secondary charge, and a tertiary charge. And again, it's apportioned to parcels receiving benefits from each one of those components of the drainage network, and that's on the basis of acreage. And lastly, there's a mowing charge. And this is for unimproved parcels. And those parcels receive an admin charge and a right-of-way mowing charge. And it's applied on a basis of per parcel. The proposed structure, again, is going to apply one general administrative charge per parcel, equally per parcel, on just the costs that are non-scalable, effectively costs that are the same for every single parcel. In addition to that, we want to absorb the mowing costs to the road network and the drainage network on the basis of what benefit is received. And so for the road network, again, it's the benefit of the line of sight. So any mowing services provided that provide line of sight benefit will receive those costs in the road assessments. And similarly, any sort of drainage-related mowing costs, again, to enhance and improve that hydraulic functionality, would be absorbed in the drainage charges. And so for the roads charges, there'll still be base and enhanced road charges, apportioned by trip generation rates. And for the drainage charges, we have a primary, secondary, and tertiary drainage charge apportioned by acreage. And so with this changing structure, what we'd like to do is present the impacts to each subcomponent charge. And so again, only parcels that benefit from each one of these subcomponents will receive a charge for their 2020 assessment. And so currently there's no general administrative charge. So that's why in current year, fiscal year 19, there is 0 for administrative. On the proposed fiscal year 20, we're looking at a $3.77 charge. Now with that, we've undone the roads administrative charge, the drainage administrative charge, and the mowing administrative charge, which have all been zeroed out for proposed fiscal year 20. Additionally, the right-of-way mowing charge has been absorbed into the drainage charges and the roads charges, again, on the basis of how those mowing services benefit the roads network and the drainage network. And what we've done is taken these charges and applied them to just sample properties, sample parcels throughout the city to generate a sort of impact. And so with this absorption of the mowing cost, we're reshuffling how costs are going to be assigned to each parcel. But with that reassignment of charges, we're also looking into increasing the level of service of mowing. Because now it's to benefit the whole city, and in particular the drainage of the whole city. And so what staff is going to plan to do is mow the whole city as needed, rather than just mowing unimproved parcels. And by unimproved, I mean undeveloped parcels. So the transition here is to mow the parcels that are obstructing the drainage network. All parcels, whether developed or undeveloped, whereas currently they're just mowing undeveloped parcels. And so with that context, we're looking at annual dollar changes by typical parcel type, but with some of these increases comes an increased level of service to, again, help every single property's any sort of drainage issues and enhance the level of service to convey that stormwater. And so we have additionally provided small non-residential and multifamily impacts, again looking at a variety of sample bills here to understand the overall effects of the changing methodology as well as increasing level of service, as well as for large non-residential parcels. And so with that said, the action from here is to adopt the updated methodology and associated assessment rates. And in doing so, it'll be consolidating the administrative charges into one charge applied equally per parcel. In addition, absorbing mowing services into the road and drainage assessments. And so the next step after that will be finalizing the assessment roll and providing to the property appraiser. I'll leave you all with that for discussion.
Commissioner Luke.
One of the first questions is, and I know staff will know what I'm talking about when I say that Activity Center 6 area, it's basically vacant. So on your chart, that parcel out there in Activity Center 6 is actually being decreased, correct?
So a vacant parcel that is no longer receiving the mowing charge would see a decrease.
Okay. All right, my next question is, you use this in your terminology, as needed. Can you define what is meant by as needed for the drainage mowing?
Yeah, and I'd like to perhaps invite staff up to provide some more context to the as-needed services. Effectively, it's to, again, enhance the drainage functionality, the hydraulic functionality to make sure the water is conveyed. And so there's some standards and processes.
Good evening, Monica Bramble, Assistant Public Works Director. So this new methodology provides the benefit of mowing for drainage, all parcels instead of those that are just vacant. So what that means is that 6 times a year on your enhanced roads and 8 times a year on the base roads, we will come through and mow. Now, if we go by your property and you have maintained it and it does not need mowed, we are not going to mow that. We are going to look for parcels that have not been mowed, therefore they're not able to have that stormwater flow through that parcel. In addition, twice a year, we will come by with specialized equipment and actually mow the bottoms of the swales. These are the areas where, especially during the rainy season, a lot of property owners have difficulty mowing and maintaining the bottom of that swale area. So twice a year, whether you, whatever road you're on, we would come by to mow that. Again, if the property owner has maintained that and it is not needed, we will not then mow that. So the as needed is as we are in the neighborhoods and go by your property, if it does need mowed, we will do that. If not, we will go on down to the parcels that do need the mowing.
That brings me with two other questions. Let's say a developed property decides they don't want to mow out that area. And we have a code currently that says you have to, for aesthetics, keep your grass mowed at a 12-inch height. So what are we going to be doing with that code if they decide no longer to maintain that area that the city is going to be taking on currently with this new methodology?
For the record, Juliana Belia, Public Works Director. The code, which requires that the grass be maintained at 12 inches in height, that will still be required to be adhered to. That code is not going to be changed. The only thing we are going, so in other words, the homeowner will be required to always maintain the 12 inches in height. So even though we're going to be cutting, for example, on local roads 6 times per year, in between, the grass will more than likely get higher than 12 inches in height. The only thing we are going to do with that code is we have many areas throughout the city that are too wet to mow, so you can't get a mower through it. We are going to put in verbiage in that code that will allow the property owner, until it's dried out, time to cut the grass. Now, that being said, by us going in twice a year, the road drainage district, and mowing the centers of all ditches, and we're going to try to time it just right to where we can time it before the rainy season, and then once perhaps in more of the fall, the winter season, hopefully that's going to have it to more of a maintainable level, especially in areas like in the Northport Estates, where right now we'll actually have to have slope mowers go in there. In a lot of cases, you have heavy, dense vegetation, including trees. So once we have that all removed, it'll be much, hopefully, easier on the homeowners to maintain their swales.
Okay, so the 12-inch aesthetic look is for the community's aesthetics and value and appreciation and things. So that part is going to stay, but you're going to give leeway to people who can't actually get in there and do it during the rainy season.
Yes, ma'am. If the ditch is so wet, the portions of the ditch are so wet, which generally speaking are the centers. In those cases, we're going to put in some verbiage to allow them time that, obviously if it's so wet they can't get a mower in there to cut it, or even a weed eater, we'll give them time till it gets dried out to be able to cut it. And we do that now. For example, we work very closely with the Code Enforcement Division of Neighborhood Development Services Department. And, we will have residents that will have a citation or a warning or something, and then they will, Code Enforcement will call us and say, the resident's telling me they just can't cut it, it's too wet. We'll send somebody out and confirm that, and we'll say, yes, that is correct.
So you follow up after code enforcement?
Yes, ma'am. We also have cases, for example, that have drainage issues. If drainage issues are reported and they say, it's just something wrong, the water's not draining. We work very closely with code enforcement on those issues.
Okay. My next question is, can you tell me what the difference is throughout the methodology between the term right-of-way and swale?
The right-of-way area includes many things. So for example, in the front of a single-family residential property, you have the road right-of-way. So you have the paved area of the road in the center, most generally speaking. Then along in front of the properties, you're going to have a swale area. And then you perhaps will have a sidewalk. You may or may not have a sidewalk in that right-of-way area. It's a public right-of-way area. The swale area is the grassy area between the paved area of the road and the private property line. That is the swale area. Then you have, generally it's like a V, and you have the banks of the swale, and then you have the center of the swale. That's the area where, excuse me, is you have, that's where your stormwater retention is within your swale area.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And my final question at this point, and I know I sent an email and asking about a couple of these wetlands. I mean, I know there are some people who have ponds. I believe you told me 16 that there's this exception for these large ponds. But so far, nobody has met the criteria of wetlands on their property, especially in the estates?
Yes, ma'am. In the city of Northport in 2010, under a former methodology, they did have within the methodology criteria that the commission adopted the methodology for both the ponds and the wetlands. So for example, in the ponds, we have a certain amount and they have kept, applying for the exemptions and kept that and maintained it. For that, they have to show us that they meet the criteria and they have a certain amount of, stormwater capacity in those ponds. We have the stormwater manager, and at the time, it was the engineering division manager that would go out and conduct the site inspections to determine whether or not the criteria was met. Now, with respect to the wetlands, that also has criteria, and it's called a jurisdictional wetlands line, and it's going to be depicted on the Florida Department of Environmental Protection wetland survey map through the state. Now, that being said, so you would have to have that jurisdictional wetlands line in that wetland, which means you have two types of wetlands. You have an isolated wetland and the jurisdictional wetlands. The jurisdictional wetland is, let's say you have a wetland on your property and you live out in the Northport Estates. That wetland has to drain into an R ditch. That R ditch drains into a waterway. That waterway drains into, let's just say, the Mayaca River. It has a path of drainage in accordance with the map adopted by the state. That is the jurisdictional wetlands line. So let's say I'm a homeowner, I live out in the estates, and I don't feel I just have an isolated wetland. That's the other type that's just like a bowl. It's like a fish bowl, a pond. It's not really connected to any drainage way or any type of water body. That's an isolated wetland. So let's say that I feel strongly I have a jurisdictional wetland on my property. So we would find that out by, I would have to hire, this is how we did it back then, this is how we would do it now. I'm going to have to prove to the city that I do have, in fact, jurisdictional wetlands. So back then, it was incumbent upon the property owner to hire a biologist. The biologist would go out and they would actually do the survey work necessary and track it down to figure out whether or not it was a true jurisdictional wetland and it was connected to all these various drainage ways and water bodies. Now, if we had someone provide us with that documentation from a registered biologist in the state of Florida and show how they met the criteria, we would have the stormwater manager or engineering division manager go out and check that, then they would receive the credit. One of the things I'd like to mention, and I know I mentioned this in the email to you, that we would like to follow up on, is we are going to prepare an ordinance adopting this officially, because we've had a couple different methodologies since then. We just want to, solidify it and make sure we have it in an actual city ordinance.
What about the isolated wetland?
It has to be a jurisdictional wetland by the criteria. It does not qualify, not for the isolated.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Commissioner McDowell?
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Luke, for those questions. Some of them answered mine, but I'd like to go back to the wetlands. So if you have a jurisdictional wetland
Yes,
on
ma'am.
your property, you have to, for lack of another term, let road and drainage know
No, ma'am. You have to provide us with verification from a registered biologist, according to the criteria, that it is in fact a true jurisdictional wetland. And that, the other thing that is going to happen is that the biologist is going to have to coordinate with Florida Department of Environmental Protection to have it added to their jurisdictional wetlands map for the city of Northport. That's a state map.
But if it's an isolated one, it's just a wetland that collects water and then it ebbs and flows
Yes,
depending
ma'am.
on the season, it doesn't do
It's
anything?
it's not connected, it's not connected to like a retention ditch that eventually flows into a waterway and then eventually flows out of the city. It is just on the property as an isolated wetland. It's not connected to any type of drainage water body.
So if I have a property out in the estates.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's raining. The water is absorbed in the land.
Yes, ma'am.
But if I have the same size property that's in a commercial development that doesn't absorb anything, why is the acreage that absorbs the water getting charged as if it's stormwater runoff going into the ditches and swales and canals? It's going right back into the earth. So why are they being charged as if it's going through the stormwater system?
You're talking about on a commercial piece of property?
Well, on like acreage out in the estates, it's not, but if you're on commercial property.
Okay, a couple different scenarios. So we'll start with the regular residential lot. The regular residential lot, you have the stormwater that comes from the rain. It will drain into the swell system in most cases. It will eventually drain into a retention ditch, then it will drain into a waterway, and then eventually out south out of the city.
Okay, but what
There's
happens?
no retention that you're providing as a single-family homeowner, so you're relying entirely on the city to accommodate the drainage of your property. That's one scenario. The next scenario we'll use is in the Northport Estates. Let's say you don't have any ponds, you don't have any wetlands, jurisdictional wetlands. It's going to be the same scenario. Your property is draining into our drainage bodies, and the city's responsible for making sure that drains. Now, if in the commercial, before I get to commercial, in the estates, however, let's say you build a stormwater pond, and that stormwater pond meets the criteria for a credit. The reason we're going to give the homeowner that credit is because they are helping us retain a certain amount of stormwater before it leaves the property. Similar to a commercial piece of property that when they have a stormwater retention pond is doing the same thing. We're gonna, when we calculate the assessments and we coordinated this with the consultant, they account for the fact a commercial piece of property has a certain amount of drainage depending on the size of their building, the size of their property, the size of their parking lot, but at the same time, they are accommodating with stormwater retention prior to it leaving the site.
So in the estates, because it's
Yes,
it's the area that has the largest parcels.
Yes, ma'am.
That the rainwater goes into the ground.
Right.
It may not go into a pond, it may not even go into the drainage system. It just goes right back into the pond.
No, ma'am, no. All of our water, all of our properties are designed to go into our swale systems, our retention ditches, and our waterways. I mean, you are always going to have a certain amount of runoff on your property. The lots are graded in that fashion. For example, if you have a lot that's a single-family lot or a lot in the estates and you have a swale out front, that water is going to be designed to go up the sides into the front swale and eventually under the road through a culvert pipe into a water body. If you're on a waterway, usually it's half and half. Half the lot is graded toward the front, and a lot of times the other half in the back is graded toward the back to go into the waterway. Your properties are all graded so they go into our swale system. We're treating all the stormwater. Not all the water just goes down into the ground.
So what kind of credit do they get if they have a pond? You said that they get a stormwater credit. What does that mean and how does that work?
They get a certain amount of money off depending on how much you know, I'd have to pull out the actual ordinance to see exactly how much of a credit they're getting.
But is that in the methodology? Because I didn't see anything about
It's in a
that.
former methodology that has, the way the language is written, it stays with the property, provided that the property owner is maintaining that pond.
For ponds, what happens is the area of the pond is calculated. The area of runoff surrounding the pond that the water goes into the pond is calculated. That acreage then is deducted from the total acreage that is used in the assessment for the tertiary drainage. So if you had a 5-acre lot, you have a 1-acre pond, 2 acres including the pond, of the water goes into the pond, you would be assessed for tertiary drainage on 3 acres instead of the 5 acres. So it depends.
Where is that in the methodology that we're approving today? Because I didn't see any of that.
That isn't a methodology that was approved in 2010. That has been moved forward through acceptance of the resolutions each year. That is why Ms. Belia said, because it's not evident, we would like to put it in ordinance, and that's going to come before you at a later date.
So are those credits reflected in the methodology statements that all of the residents receive?
Yes.
They have their credit already in the statement that they got, showing
Yes. Their tertiary drainage amount has already been deducted for the pond credit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Commissioner Kearsarge?
I can get my mic on. Okay, thank you, Mayor. I have 3 questions. I'll just wait for you guys.
It echoes and carries.
The first one is that at May 2nd meeting, we were told that on June 1st, we would receive hard numbers that would adjust the fee structure. So have we received those? Because the numbers that we've received today are the same exact numbers that we've gotten on May 2nd.
So since May 2nd, we've received updated tax roll information, and that's what's being applied in the current numbers. So
It's the same numbers.
These dollars here?
Yes. The 162, I'll tell you in a minute. Yeah, the 183.60, 171.56 are the same exact numbers that were given to us in May. And I can give you that.
And what we,
Can I
let's
clarify
see here, residential-
April 1 workshop or the June 17th
Sorry,
workshop?
April
April
1st.
1st. Okay, thank you.
Yes, April 1st workshop. Now you got me wondering.
So,
Yes, April 1st, for sure.
so
Vacant, 0.23 acres, you've got current assessment at 183.60. Budgeted additional level of service. And it was 177.12. Okay, let me explain. Okay, so your base budget and your additional level of services went from 164.55 in one case and 177.12. And then, in our newest things, they went to 171.
Okay,
I guess what I'm trying to get at is that it's the same amount. Before it was $49.15 to a single family vacant, 0.23 acre lot. The increase was, let me go back, the single family 0.23 acre lot that had a home on it, it wasn't vacant, was going to be a $49.15 increase, and now you're looking at a it's $43.59, so I guess it did go down by $3,
Yes.
but, So is that what you're saying, that the increase in our growth and the additional funds that we've brought in our growth will only reduce it by $3?
So what we've done is taken the budget, so the approved budget, and distributed amongst all benefiting parcels for every single assessment component. And so when we conduct that, we have changing pieces in the numerator, which is the budget, however that finalized, as well as changing pieces in the denominator, however the drainage units and road units finalized.
Yeah, because the exact word was, the parcels that will be added to the tax rolls will be accounted for and will adjust these rates. And I would assume that the rates would go down.
And they did.
They did go down,
Yes.
but our budget went up. So that's probably where the difference is?
Okay, the numbers you're referring to, and I don't know if I can get to this, were from our budget workshop where commission needed to decide what level of service. So there were 3 different scenarios that were given. Commission consensus was to do the budget, the drainage, and the sidewalk. So if
Can we
you
just
see
say
for-
majority consensus, because I did not.
Yes, majority consensus was that, yes. So as you see there, then that was the 177, 112.
Right.
The rates that you see today, after then, they've been adjusted with the new parcel information, it went down
by $3.
6.
To the 171. So those numbers that you saw at the budget workshop, all of them went down a bit. And that is because we took, that had budget numbers, but it hadn't rolled in to the new tax rolls. That makes sense.
Okay. All right, so you're saying the new methodology will include the credits for the holding ponds and so on and so forth, but you're going to have to do an ordinance in the future in order to implement that?
No, ma'am. The way the methodology was written in 2010, it would carry forth. It did not have to be
Oh, right,
updated and all
because
that.
we didn't have anything to do with the drainage.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, gotcha.
The only thing that I said is we're going to adopt an ordinance so that it's very clear from here on out, the credits for ponds and wetlands, this has been established. And we'll
Okay.
continue.
And to be very clear that the services are going to remain the same, but the enhancements will be that enhanced roadways will be mowed 6 times a year, base, or what do you call them, roads will be 8 times a year,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
neighborhood roads.
Arterials and collectors, right.
All right, which one, will you be mowing the neighborhood roads?
6 times per year.
Those are 6 times a year.
Yes,
Okay, I
ma'am.
had it backwards.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and then the enhanced will be 8 times a year. Okay, and then you will also be.
Excuse me, I apologize. That's the opposite. I know it seems
see,
like it
so-
should be.
okay.
Enhanced, right, enhanced are the base.
The neighborhood.
Or the neighborhoods.
Enhanced are the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Base are
Base
the
is the arterials and collectors.
See, I did the same thing.
I know.
Okay. All right. And currently, we don't do that much or that often, correct?
Not for developed. For developed, it's incumbent upon the homeowner. The service level we're adding for the local roads is going to be the 6 times per year.
Okay, but even the ulterior and collectors, we don't do 8 times a year, correct? It's an enhanced level of service.
No, we do those. We actually do the mowing 8 times per year for arterials and collectors currently. So that service level is staying the same.
Okay. So it's really about those developed lots that cannot cut their own ditches.
Or would prefer not to.
Or that it's unsafe for them to.
Yes, ma'am.
Or that they prefer not to. And Mr. Speak had said at the last meeting in April that that's roughly about 25%. You all did the information for that. It's on the record. We are changing this to cut that 25% of the citizens' right-of-way, but we're not going to touch the 75% of the right-of-way where the citizens actually keep their stuff up, correct?
That's correct, if they don't want us to. The other thing we're going to do, which is an increased level of service for everyone, is the centers of the ditches.
Right, the center
twice per year.
ditches twice a year.
Yes, ma'am.
Right,
And if I
okay.
can add, the reason for that is that this is for the storm water functioning, the system functioning. So if myself as a property owner cuts my swale and my right-of-way, my next-door neighbor does not, that impacts the storm water in my property. So this isn't, we're not doing this for the mowing aesthetics. We're doing this for the function of the whole stormwater system, in that it takes everybody has that cutting that needs to happen so the stormwater is flowing through the system appropriately. So it doesn't, yeah, you may not touch my swale and mow it, but you may do that to my neighbors, therefore that stormwater is going to flow where it should.
And my final question, is there a way that we can adopt 50% of the increases that are being presented today, or do we have to, is it an all or nothing? Because the way I'm thinking about it is that it's going to take a while to implement some of these projects that this proposal is attempting to address. Just the middle of the swales to get a schedule together to actually determine where you're going to hit first, and then you're going to have to get equipment and maybe even personnel.
Okay, a couple of things. My recommendation is to adopt all or none. I've already had, actually as late as this morning, a discussion with Mr. Speak. He is ready to go tomorrow, although this is not going to be implemented till October. So he does have a plan and he is ready. And as part of this methodology, we included additional personnel and equipment for the mowing at additional level of service.
I will also add, this methodology isn't as easy as saying, okay, cut everybody's $1 or $2. It has to do with how everyone is assessed by their acreage, whether they get primary, secondary, or tertiary. So when you take
That's why I said
any
50%.
money
Yeah.
off or on, it doesn't, it's not a clear linear effect. It's going to affect some properties more, other properties not. And again, this methodology, the rates we are charging have to directly relate to the benefit they are receiving. So they would have to be all recalculated.
I'm done.
Commissioner Luke?
When this initially came up
Commissioner Luke,
last year,
I just want to say that we're going to start wrapping this up because we're well into the next meeting, so just a few more minutes worth of questions. Yes, ma'am.
when we started this methodology last time, and we actually refused it, we went back and went through trying to refine it, because what was actually existing in that initial one was putting the bulk of all of the increase on the estates. And they had well over $250 increase we were looking at. And as we talked, we said exactly what a lot of these commenters said. This is a system. We've never had a fully functioning drainage system within the existence of the city, and we need one. And because of it acting like a road system, the drainage system should be the same way, and everybody should be paying a part for the system. And so that's what we've been working on in all of these meetings, getting us to that point where the fairness does come in and it's spread across everybody. Do you feel that this study reflects the fairness that the state law puts upon us for assessments?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you.
Commissioner McDowell, about 5 more minutes.
So this network isn't just for the property owners. And let me start over. This network is for roads, and this network is for drainage. Both of these networks stand alone based on this methodology. But this network is all-encompassing. It doesn't just affect the estates, what's flooding in there, it affects downstream, miles away.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Just like the roads, it affects miles away. You have to use the roads. Just because the roads in front of your house are working and they're fine, doesn't mean that the roads, as you go to the grocery store, to the doctor, to the hospital, or wherever, those roads may need to be maintained also. It's a network, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the drainage network, just because you live in the estates or just because you live in the West Villages or Lakeside Plantation, you're still using that drainage because you may have to go to City Hall or you may have to go to the store. But in order to get to the store, if the drainage isn't working, you're not going to be able to because it's flooded.
That's
Correct?
Yes, ma'am, you're correct.
So this network is not applied equally because some are being charged and others are not. Example, the enhanced roadways. If I live in an area that I have a private road, but I use the main city roads, I expect them to be cleared. I'm not paying for that. Is that correct?
You are paying. So every City of Northport property owner pays for base roads. No matter where you live in the city, you pay for base roads.
But the line of sight, the vertical mowing is enhanced roads. It's not in the base.
No, that line of sight will be for any road that requires it. That line of sight isn't specific to base or enhanced. It is going for the roads that require it.
But it's not being charged equally.
Maybe what I think she's trying to say is maybe it's the gated communities like West Village District that they take care of their roads internally and they would not benefit from that line of sight option. Maybe that's why it says enhanced. I'm not sure.
The line
No?
of sight, the actual work that is going to be done, depending on what road it is on, it will be assigned. So if that line of sight is done on Cranberry Boulevard, that is then going to be assigned to Cranberry Boulevard. If it's assigned to a local road, the charge would be put on that local road and it would be then distributed for the enhanced.
But
So
if-
it goes to the base or the enhanced. It's going to be distributed equally to whatever road is being maintained.
But what Monica's also saying is that although we're not providing services for private subdivisions, they still have the capability of using the arterials and collector roadways, of which we're going to be doing line of sight work. So they are receiving a benefit from when they use those roads, if they travel down those roads.
Do we currently cite the current system, not this proposed?
Yes,
the
ma'am.
current system. Do we currently cite vacant property for excess growth above 12 inches after we've mowed the 6 times a year? So 6 times a year you mow. Do we charge vacant property if it's over 12 inches?
Okay, the Public Works Department does not charge the property owner for that. That would be handled by code enforcement. So if somebody reported them, or if we noticed that for example, the height of the lawn was very, very high, and
I'm talking vacant parcels. There's
that's
no
what I'm
lawn.
talking about.
Okay.
So if the vacant parcel, most likely it would be somebody that we reported to code enforcement, or code enforcement during their travels would witness the excessive growth above 12 inches. Code enforcement would send a notice to the property owner, notice of an order to correct the violation. But the property owner, although we cut it 6 times per year, the vacant properties on local roads, they're still required to adhere to that code in maintaining their lawn up to 12-inch height.
But do they have to pay a penalty?
Commissioner McDowell.
So we are going to, go ahead.
What I was going to say, Vice Mayor, is it's the level of service. So where we got to today, as far as the level of service of the 6 times per year for the local roads and the 8 times for collector and arterials, is about level of service. So, for example, if we were to calculate how many times per year we should cut a vacant property, just in general, to make sure it doesn't get above that 12 inches in height, then we would tell you how many times per year and also tell you what the increase would be on the assessment, which it would be much higher. So that's the reason, through the methodology studies and the various commissions, we've come to those 6 cuts per year and 12 cuts per year on, or 8 cuts per year, excuse me, on arterials and collectors. That's how we arrived at those numbers. But the property owners are still required to adhere to the 12-inch maximum height limit for their grass.
So I guess the question is for the city manager, do you know of any times that code enforcement has gone out for vacant property that has not been maintained above 12 inches and cited them?
I can't answer that off the top of my head from right now.
I know that plenty of people that have improved properties, the homeowners, it gets to 12 inches, they can't mow, and they get cited. And according to the code, even the vacant parcels should be cited, but they're not.
But Vice Mayor, if I may, I don't know the number either. We can check, but I can tell you, I have received phone calls from people that live, property owners that live up north, asking who can they hire. They have vacant land and they got a citation. So we have them. I don't know the number, but we're more than happy to find out. We'd have to work with code enforcement to get those numbers.
Okay, so no other questioning. I'll
I
entertain a
have
motion.
more questions,
Well,
but we
I
have
know,
to
but
move
it's time
on.
to move on. Yeah. Commissioner Carrison.
My only question is actually, it has to do with emotion. So, going back to what I proposed in May, if we stuck with the current structure and we allowed for an opt-in option, so if someone needed their right-of-way to be mowed because of safety or health reasons, or if they couldn't keep up and they were constantly getting code enforcement violations, that the opt-in would allow them to hire the city essentially to go out and cut their right-of-way 6 to 8 times a year, depending on where they lived. And then on top of that, we would find a way to schedule the dig outs once a year. I don't think it's twice a year that's necessary, but once a year, maybe even biannual, and in a systematic manner. Isn't that less likely to have an increase effect? Because we're not going, then we wouldn't be increasing the level of service. We would be having an opt-in option. The only level of service that we would be increasing would be the, say, biannual redig and regrade of the citywide ditches. And so, and then we would keep things the way they are as far as the charges. Is that even possible? Or, I mean, granted, we haven't, because we had a consensus to continue forward, I would never expect you to come out with numbers, trust me. But is it even possible to do that morphed version that I had suggested?
That completely changes the methodology results, so we would have to go back to the drawing board.
You have a motion?
I make a motion.
Don't look at me.
Commissioner Luke?
I'm going to make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-R-13. And with that, we follow closely through this first year to see if there's tweaks that need to come about in this following year.
Do I have a second? I second the motion. Mr. Luke, you have anything to that? I don't either. Commissioner McDowell?
I'm not going to be approving this. It's probably no surprise. We are charging quarter-acre properties, which is the majority of the parcels in the city of Northport, as if they are a 1-acre parcel. But we are only charging this network that we keep talking about that is supposed to have a benefit citywide as a integral network. Some are paying, some aren't. Everybody has to use the roads, no matter where you live. Everybody has to have safe line of sight, no matter where you're driving. Everybody wants to make sure that the city of Northport is not flooding, whether you're in the estates or in your older section of town, if you're on the east end or west end. But some people aren't paying for it equally. And that's where I have a problem. If you are an integral network, everybody should be paying something towards that network, whether you're using it or not, because at some point you are using it. Maybe somebody's coming to visit you. Maybe you have to have the ambulance come to you, but it's flooded and they got to work your way around it. There's line of sight issues. My biggest thing is that quarter acre, being charged for a 1-acre parcel. I have a couple concerns about the drainage going in parcels that collect the rainwater. I understand that everything drains to the system, but there is still land that isn't going anywhere. It's completely natural. It's not draining anywhere. I feel that this methodology is flawed, and for that reason, I am not going to be approving this.
I do find we need to be careful because staff did address those concerns you had. They had answers for them. I think we got to be careful we don't convolute the conversation because it's confusing enough. The very things you said that they're not paying for, staff had answers for those. The reason for this methodology is to bring fair and equitability to the entire city, and that is exactly what it's doing. Whenever we just keep restating it as though the answer was never given, it just convolutes the conversation and it creates
Reading the
more-
methodology, and
I
there
understand,
are
and it
areas that
and it
is
creates more
contradictory.
confusion, which is not needed at a time like this. Commissioner Carousel.
First, I want to say that I don't want anyone, and I mean anyone, to blame staff
Oh, I'm not blaming
or our
staff.
administration for this. This was purely commission-directed 2 years ago. So I don't want anyone to think that the staff themselves brought this before you because they just pulled it out of their hats. This was completely directed by the commission. So please, I want you to be kind to them. I personally believe that there are things that I have trouble with on the methodology. But I think that we really should have looked at it in a different light, that we really needed to look at the pay-as-you-go plan. If you need to or you have to have your frontage cut, then so be it, but you're going to pay for it. I do believe that we still need to look at scheduling the dig-outs. I don't believe they should be done annually. I think they should be done biannually, and that'll be less of a burden on our budget. I do believe that it should be done in a scheduled, systematic measure, that you do a certain area of neighborhood and move on and move on. In the same token, I completely agree with the commissioners that discussed the whole code enforcement issue, that I think that it is not expeditious, that waiting 30 days to comply, another 30 days to comply, all of that put together really creates a burden on those who actually comply with the code enforcement. And finally, I think that we could have done a better job on this. and again, I want to reiterate, this is not staff's fault. But I think there were measures that we could have taken to make this not so much fair and equitable, but a little bit less of a burden on the taxpayer, because I do agree with Commissioner Hanks that, you know, this is something that we've been trying to address for 3 years now while we've been in office, and we wanted to increase the taxes a small amount at a time, but we've pretty much been shot down, except for last year. We did have a decent increase. But me, as a individual commissioner, I have to look at this in totality. If we're talking about a $20 fire increase, a $10 solid waste increase, a $50 road and drainage increase, and these are all rough numbers and are not exact. No clue as to what the millage increase is going to be. And definitely no clue as to what the usual 5 to 6% increase in your value of your home is going to be, and how that's going to affect your ad valorums. So you add all of that up, and as I said before, and I will say it again, we're pricing people out of the city of Northport, and that's not what the city of Northport was. The city of Northport was a beautiful place to live, and it was affordable. We're making it unaffordable. So as far as I'm concerned, I can't support this. I understand the context behind it, but I still believe that there's ways that we can do it without having to create such a burden on the taxpayers. Because again, it's an overall complex visualization of how will this affect us on a whole. And it's very concerning.
Yeah, and I'm glad Commissioner Carrasone had mentioned totality of this whole thing, because that's where I was going with my follow-up comment. When we had talked about the methodology and this study, I was 100% for it, because I do understand we have serious problems for the drainage and the roads and stuff. But that was before budget. And the not to exceeds for fire, for solid waste, for the city's budget itself. And as a taxpayer, this is a hard pill for myself to even swallow. I can't imagine how it is for the people that are retired, on fixed incomes, maybe disability, or even if you're saving for retirement. This has an impact, but it's not just an impact on the residents. This is an impact on those that rent, because everything flows downhill. The landlords are going to be increasing those rents, which is going to price it even higher. It is going to affect our commercials, because they have to pay these higher rates. This in totality, and I love that word, Commissioner Carrasone, so thank you for that. Totality, it's very difficult, and that's what I have to look at. Had we been able to keep the budget down lower and not have an increase in millage, had we been able to not have increases in the fire or solid waste, and I know they're not related to road and drainage, I would have been okay with this increase. But in totality, I can't. So for that reason, I still am not going to be voting for this.
Commissioner Luke?
And I'm done, Mayor.
This came before us last year, and it was going to be an increase last year, and we did not increase the tax millage last year. So with what was just stated, we should have went with the higher taxation on this, or higher assessment that was presented to us last year, and done it at a time when we hid the stuff within the millage rate. But we can't undo the decision that we made last year. But I really don't like leaving the city in the same place that it is with drainage when we are behind in our 4-year type of methodology. We're in what, year 6 now of a methodology? In the way that we even viewed it last year, it wasn't being done equitably. The assessment wasn't really following what the state says, that you pay only for the service that you receive. And we have distributed so that everybody is playing a part, or paying a part, or the estates would be paying over $250 instead of $100. So we have worked at this over and over, trying to make it as equitable as possible. Can there be tweaks? Because nothing's going to be perfect, and none of us are going to agree on which way is the perfect way to go, because it's not there. But that's why I added to the motion that an evaluation would occur within 1 year, so that if there are the tweaks that Commissioner Carazone talked about, we could see could be applied to this methodology, we have the right to do it. We're not stuck in this for 4 years without coming back to it and adjusting things. So to me, we got to have that drainage system. You got to do it equitably. I am one of those quarter-acre lot people. Mine's going up 34 point something, but so is the 3-acre person who lives in the estate, 34 point something. It's only 19 point something for the 5-acre estate parcel. But I know that I am paying my part into the community for a drainage system that's going to help every one of my neighbors. Actually, I take a little bit of pride in doing that. Thank you.
Commissioner Emmerich?
Couple things I heard during public comment. One was I am definitely not going to West Virginia, that's for sure. Second off was a gentleman brought up about the level of service and not seeing it. And that has happened, I've heard it over the years, and it's gone on and on and on. I can't support this methodology the way it is, especially when you have a vacant lot that does not see an increase, but everything else does. You know, I understand its numbers and calculations and the certain plays that came into it to come up with those calculations. I think that if we stayed with our regular rates that we're going right now and upped, or at least got the perception of a level of service out there, it's an easier stone to throw down the road because they're seeing that they're getting what they're paid for. And right now, I don't think the citizens are seeing that. And that's where I stand on that. So I just wanted to bring that up.
All right, let's take the vote. And that fails 2-3 with Commissioner McDowell, Commissioner Emmerich, and Commissioner Carazone dissenting. All right, we are going to close this meeting. Yep.
They probably know what to do now.
Yeah, we need to know what to do.
A lot of direction
I
now, because the entire budget
apologize to
process
them
was
for all
based
the
on this
time and the
methodology.
money, and apologize to the taxpayers for the
Everyone
money that's
should.
been spent on consultants for 2 years, and it's going to be nothing.
It all away.
An issue with the budget now, because this entire budget was based on the direction of moving forward with this, and if we're not,
And that was a commission direction.
Yep,
pretty,
Odd how
go back
we're
and.
so schizophrenic up here.
-1.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner McDowell.
Hey, guys, we're not done, please.
That's me.
Last year's road and drainage budget was what? Do you know, have that information?
Not on me, no, I
Okay.
don't.
And I don't know, this is something that we'll have to work through. Can we increase the road and drainage flat across the board 10%? And I'm throwing a number out there.
Well, I can tell you, you can't go more than 10%, because without doing a new methodology.
That's exactly where I'm going with that. Can we, across the board, increase, 5, 10%?
We'll have to go to the
Without
max.
doing the methodology?
Even come close. We'll have to go to the max.
We have issues, but I'll let Julie.
Couple of things. This is not a ad valorem district. This is a non-ad valorem
It's non-ad
district.
valorem.
So we are bound by state law. We are bound by our own city ordinance, which requires us to do methodology every 4 years or whatever. We have to look at all this. What we are doing since the last methodology is we are completely revamping and redoing it, completely different. We are no longer concentrating on our road work and performing roadway services as part of the road bond. The road bond after 5 years is finished. So now we are going into a completely different area, which is stormwater drainage and rehabilitating our stormwater drainage. So this whole methodology is based on that. That being said, it's never going to be to where everybody's going to just get a 10% increase. That is an ad valorem type situation. This is a totally different situation. We have to calculate and show how we are relating the service benefit to the properties that we're assessing. And that's what we've done through this most recent methodology. And we tried to even tweak it a little bit further so there would not be such a heavy impact on the North Port Estates area, which quite frankly is the most difficult for us to manage our stormwater. That's where we have the most problems, and we're trying to rectify that. And also we tried to be cognizant of the homeowners and to help them out and to get the drainage system in a manageable place. My biggest problem is this. For many years, $25 a year, developed or undeveloped, $49 a year, and now we're at where we're at. And I still have to take care of 60-year-old infrastructure that, quite honestly, much of it is falling apart. I've got water control structures that are, I don't know how they're keeping up. So my point is, somehow we need the money. We tried to do it in the approved manner by state statutes and so forth through a methodology study. And this is what we've got. But somehow our district needs money to operate. I can't keep pushing it off and letting ditches not get cut for, retention areas and waterways and so forth. I've got to somehow make it so this city doesn't flood.
Commissioner, one of the issues we have is if we were to do an across-the-board raise in rates, even up to the 10% like you mentioned, is the rates have to be for the service we're providing. And if you increase rates of 10% for road work, but we're not doing that road work anymore, the methodology is shot, and it only takes one person to challenge it.
But the road work is also including the vertical mowing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's
But
just
most
one
of the
type
work
of
we're
mowing.
doing now is not
That's
road
the
work, it's drainage
methodology.
work. So how do I charge somebody a 10% increase, or even the current rates for roads, when I'm not doing that level of work anymore?
So and I'm brainstorming here. If we don't do the 10% for roads, but we do the 10% for drainage.
I can't validate that's the number, though. That's the problem we're having.
Right.
I'll tell you, we just did
I'm
the citizens a
just-
disservice
City
here, a big disservice.
I haven't changed my mind.
I'm not saying you have, I'm just saying we did a disservice.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, ma'am.
we're just having a little,
Please, guys, we can't hear.
there possibly, we can work with our consultant to try to work a little bit backwards to try to get some of these rates down, but yet still stay within the methodology. So we can work with him to try to do that.
So what kind of time frame are we talking with that?
It would be contingent upon staff and the level of budget that would be approved. And so we would apply the same methodology with the same apportionments of cost to a lower budget number.
Okay.
Would we have to resend those letters? Because we're changing the methodology. Would we have to
We've
resend
already
those?
advertised the methodology.
Since the rate will be coming down and every parcel will receive a lower charge, we would not have to re-advertise.
Well, that's good. There's a savings of about $40,000.
When can that be brought back, and how much more would he charge for his services to continue on with this methodology?
Yeah.
It's fair to ask him what
There's
he
the
would
hot
charge
plate.
us.
There's the hot plate.
Unfortunately, no disrespect, but I don't know, that's his call, of what his company would charge.
But willing to do so for a charge?
I'm sure for the right price, everybody's willing to do something. But it's not fair to ask him what his bosses are going to charge us.
Okay, I take the question back.
City manager and mayor, we could work with the consultant and be prepared for the first public hearing in September.
Do you need a special
That's
hearing?
Julie.
No.
The problem with that is, I can foresee it now. One is we're either going to have the comment, we're backed up against the wall.
No.
And
I won't do that.
quite honest, I don't want to hear that
Well,
again.
that's what's happening now. That's exactly what we're doing right now.
And B, but the other side of that is you're going to be presented with something with absolutely zero choice but to approve it. Because if you don't approve it, then we won't have a budget for the road and drainage district going into next fiscal year.
And everybody
So I
goes
can't
home.
wait until September. We're going to have to bring you something in August, which is what we did last year.
Can I
The
ask
problem
a
is I
quick
can't
question?
promise you the
Because
quality
this
of it at
is
this
really
point. We spent
relevant.
over a year working on this
Commissioner Carrasone, you had something really quick?
Yeah, so is it possible, remember earlier when I asked if we could reduce this by 50%? So it sounds like we can if we work backwards?
I don't know about the percentage number, but we can reduce it, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's that, and then can we, city manager,
No.
Yeah, I mean, they have to understand.
Can we,
can we come back with options maybe? So here's what my thought process is.
Has to be the methodology.
Is that if you keep the rate as is, but you're adding the cutout of the drainage ditches every other year, that's gonna change even the old rate study.
What we would propose is and it's gonna affect the level of service. So we'll cut down the level of service and we'll identify that and we will cut down the rates. That's
But
what we'll
why
have to do,
wouldn't
like you're stating. So maybe we.
You're talking about this particular
Yes,
type of,
because what I'm trying to do is get this methodology approved, but adjust the rates. So
Okay,
that
why
we're
can't-
performing the services that we have studied and that we are
Can't we go by the
assessing
old
for.
methodology?
No, we cannot do that.
Utilizing, why?
Because the old methodology is based on roadway work. This methodology is based on drainage work.
Done with our
That part I
roadway work.
We're
The
done.
old methodology was both.
it was majority road work.
It's both,
which
but
is
the
done.
heavy concentration was roadway work.
When we finish with the road bond, they switch, and we've been talking about this also for a couple of years. We need to switch to drainage.
Right.
And
Cost, you
Why
lower the
wouldn't you
level of
do one
service.
Correct.
Based on both? Why wouldn't the
because
methodology?
the need for roadway work is not as great as it was 6 years ago when this methodology that we're operating under was adopted.
And now that we've done the roadway work, the road bond work, there's a much lesser need for the maintenance of the roads. That's reflected in this methodology. But there's a higher need for the drainage, which is also reflected in the methodology.
Then we need to look at bonding and just bite the bullet, and people need to pay $15 a year for the next 25 years to get the drainage fixed. And then as far as expanding the biannual cut of the road, the grade and digging of the ditches, that gets added onto the methodology. We reconfigured that. It'll probably be a $5, $3 increase. There you go.
But remember,
problem
we're also
solved.
talking about Price too. Price Boulevard, we're gonna have to do something there. We'll have to either get,
For ditches or
no,
drainage.
well, you're talking about you're talking about getting another bond. We either have to get a bond for
Oh,
Price
oh, oh.
Boulevard, we gotta get a
Yeah.
loan for Price Boulevard. These are other costs that are gonna be put on the citizens.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we're just taking from Peter to give to Paul. And we're
And charging them, but in a different
We are
manner.
we are causing a convoluted conversation. We're muddying the waters, and it's already muddy enough when you're talking about methodology. And all we're doing is we're shifting dollars around, and we're going to end up going over here and getting a bond and getting a loan for this, and everybody's costs will go up no matter what we do. I'm just saying, this was a commission directive. We specifically said, come back with this. We like this methodology. It's the most fair and equitable of anything that was out there. And then they come up here with it, and now we said, forget it.
No, that's not what we said.
That's exactly what was
What we did
said.
the year before,
That's
too.
what we did the year before. And this is why your taxes are where they're at now.
Because it keeps getting put off.
Because you're right. The commission is fiscally irresponsible, not because we don't save you money, but because we don't put the money where it's supposed to go. There you go. Who's next?
I would like to recommend that we do that. I mean, the level of service will be adjusted, but it's
Yes,
the only
ma'am.
way you're going to get the cost down. It's the only way to utilize, to be accountable and responsible for paying for this methodology. And
Next
we
year's gonna be
need a
30%.
methodology put in place. So that is being responsible. So I would like to see that come back at, I mean,
August?
we're going to have to do this quickly. So we have already scheduled conferences in the center of August. Some are going up on the 14th, so I would recommend Tuesday, the 13th. We have a special meeting to be able to look at this, if they can do it.
It won't be ready by then.
It wouldn't be ready
We could
by
try the
then?
week after your conference, and I can see if we can get it done by then, but there's no way I can have that. Just keep in mind, in order to have something to you in 2.5 weeks, that means in a week I have to have it done so that it's posted on an agenda.
Can I ask another
One,
question?
2,
Commissioner
3,
Simon, go
4,
ahead.
it's a month.
Okay, city manager, because remember, I'm looking at this in totality. The millage increase,
Which is part of a problem.
I know. So the millage
At that point,
increase,
we're picking which group, which work we're gonna do next year.
I know. But I have to look at the citizens getting a $100 to $200 increase in their
I
taxes
get
too.
that.
And, you know, there are an awful lot of people on fixed incomes. So the millage increase, do we have an estimated amount that would be to a regular 80 by 120 lot, or is that impossible?
We provide, I don't have it in front of me, I can find it real quick, of what that millage increase for you can't go by 81 by
Yeah,
120.
it's the value of the
the
property.
It's the value. If you have a-
250,000
After exemption?
after exemption.
$200,000 taxable value.
I think it's about 800 and something.
Right, but I'm wondering what the increase is. Because I might change my vote if I say that the ad valorums are going to come in flat. And
Flat while we were doing budget workshops.
Again, when you cut the cost, you're cutting the level of service.
And we're already having complaints about level of service.
yeah.
So it's just gonna get worse.
One
It's just
situation,
gonna get
but-
worse. And if we,
Go ahead,
and if
what
we
were
go
you
down
saying?
this path,
gotta
next
find
year's
it.
gonna be 30%.
Find information.
That's exactly where we're gonna be. This is what I've been saying.
I voted for then. There we go.
Commissioner Emmett.
Now, the one thing that I was looking at, I agree with the methodology, I agree with going back and lowering the rates for this year, and then possibly we can adjust the rates next year as this methodology progresses. But at least right now, with everything that we're stacking up this year, this is a little help. And this would lower that tax base a little bit. So I'd be willing to go with the methodology with the lower rates than what's here. You see what I'm saying? Because that's what they said, that's what they said they
But let
would
me-
do. I understand it adjusts the level of service, but let's get the ball rolling and move it down the road. I'd be willing to do that.
So let me ask you this, so if this is part of the cause for 30% next year, what are you gonna do? Because this is the stuff that caused us to be at 25% this year. So what are we gonna do next year?
Because we kick it down the road.
We just keep kicking it down the
I'm
road.
telling you that in my notes here, it says something about a $10 increase this year, and that was from last year's budget conversation.
Well, in my thinking, like you're asking me that question, it's like we're looking at a 43.59 increase. What if it was 33 this year and then?
And the next year, it'll be 57 because we saved that $10.
But we may not have all those other adjustments going on with fire and solid waste and all those other districts that add on to the total.
But I assure you, this conversation is gonna happen in every single one of those.
And I understand that, but I understand that we may be in a better position next year than what we are right this moment.
Exactly
All
what
I'm
we
trying
said
to
for the
say
last 2 years.
is part of the negotiations, and we can work back and forth to find that common goal on what we're looking at right now.
Right, and I see what you're saying, Commissioner. I'm just saying that those are the exact same phrases that were used over the last 2 years that I've been in office. And now we're at 25, so what are we gonna do when we're at 30 next year? Because we keep saying, you know, this year's just a little tough. This year's a little tough. You know, I mean, it just keeps piling. At some point, you gotta pay the piper at some point, and it's better today than it's gonna be next year, just like it was better last year than it was this. That's just my concern.
Yeah, I mean, it should have been last year, but
But it wasn't last year.
I know.
We're looking at it this year.
Right, and so now we're gonna push it off to next year.
No, I think we're looking at a compromise. We're not pushing it totally off,
But whatever you pull back this year is gonna be necessary next year.
possibly, yes.
Well, it will be.
well,
Well,
we're also
it's a whole
talking
new
about an
methodology.
increased level of service too, so let's remember
Right, It's a
that.
whole new methodology on what they're looking to do. They're changing from roads to drainage at this point. So who's to say that they get out there and they start working and it's not taking as long as what they thought it was. It's not gonna take this level of service as what they projected. It actually comes in a little bit less. We don't know that until a year from now from that methodology going forward and then stabilizing. So we don't know those numbers, so we're projecting them.
Right.
All I'm stating is, take the methodology, take a little bit money back, and let's see where we're at next year. That's all I'm saying.
No, I get it, but let me promote the opposite argument, which is they come in and they say, my gosh, we need more because this isn't working. We actually need it to be higher. So then we come in next year and it's way worse than it is this year. This is what I'm saying, is that, I mean, we're just rolling dice. Every year that we do this, we just keep rolling dice. At least this year, we know where we're at. We know what the costs are this year. If we hold them back artificially again this year, next year, we're not going to know what those costs are. They may come back lower. You're absolutely right. They may also come back higher. And what I'm saying is next year, if it comes back higher, it's going to be even worse because at least this year, people understand what the cost is. I get it. Everybody's frustrated. I know that. But right now, it's not a surprise. Next year, it's going to be a surprise again if it does not come back that way. So that same argument works both ways. I'm just trying to look at both sides of that argument. I see what you're saying, Commissioner. I really do.
And I understand exactly what you're saying, too. You know, I get that part of it.
Well, we get public comment before everybody leaves.
Do that. We have
What
that?
the millage increase was for a $100,000 house, which is the easiest to figure out and just double or whatever from there.
Right.
About $87 a year.
On the millage rate, coming back?
Okay. Let's do two public comments. We have Pat Switzer and Greg Cooley again.
Public comment on this, Mayor, I don't have any other cards.
Oh,
So if you want to close public comment after these two.
And after this, we will close the public comment.
My comments are about the 6 o'clock agenda.
Oh, okay, well then we'll wait for that because we're going right to that. Thank you. Mr. Cooley?
Greg Hewley.
I didn't see that, sorry.
On road and drainage, why are vacant parcels in this methodology that you're going to go back and review? Why is vacant parcels getting a tax reduction? And that's exactly what was on them charts, when they're the ones that get the most services. Their numbers went down, but my numbers go up, okay? Everyone is not getting an equal tax hike as as some of the commissioners reported. It's not fair, it's not right. And bottom line, so if you're going to do this, then can I get a tax credit for mowing my own parcel? Okay, overall property taxes. Budget reduction claim of $5.5 million really doesn't add up to me, but I look at it this way. If you shoot for the moon, $5.5 million is pretty daggone easy to cut. So I'm not buying that claim, okay? I hear about a lot of lack of city services. A lot of people complained about it. We're looking, if you're going to raise our taxes 20%, we want to see more service. And then the last thing is, so if the city is financially very stable, as the mayor said, then why do you need 20% more out of me this year in my taxes? Why can't you, if you need more money for these bigger projects, why don't you spread it over a 3-year period of 5 or 6 or 7% over a 3-year period? And last but not least, why don't you explain to us, and I still have not heard this, what are the top 3 cost drivers for 2019 and 2020 to substantiate your need for a 20% increase? Explain to me what the top 3 things are, and then maybe I'll have a better understanding of it. Thank you.
City manager might be able to answer that question.
City Manager, do you have anything to that? And then I will ask up Mr. Riley, and then this is the last one we're going to receive.
3 top things that changed.
Top 3. Well, we are increasing level of service. We are providing more police officers. We are, commission approved.
Road and drainage only.
For road and drainage only?
I thought that's what he meant.
Were you asking
No?
citywide, sir, or just citywide?
Okay.
Citywide?
That's what I thought.
Thank you.
So
I didn't understand.
there's a new aquatic facility,
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Lear.
not even open yet, so we haven't even,
Go ahead, Mr. Lear.
there's been union contracts that were renegotiated, as well as a pay plan throughout the whole city that never had an increase to pay for. The body cameras this year that were added at $250,000 a year. Those are the top 3.
There we go. Thank you. Mr. Riley? Right over here. Sir? Yes, sir. Just state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Kevin Riley. Moved here from Indianapolis, 2.5 years ago. Love this place. It is our dream home. But I have listened to this, and I understand, I live in the estates. We have 3 acres. I pay a tremendous amount of money for the privilege to live here, and I gladly do it. and it's tough because I'm retired. I saved money all my life so that I could live the life I'm living now. But how many people in here would like to see a flood in their house? I haven't heard that. Anybody here want to see water in their house? I sure as hell don't. Pay the $100 or whatever it is and get this fixed. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Thanks, Joe. All right. So I need a new motion. Anybody
I'll
have
see if
one?
I can, I'll try it based on the conversation. I'll see if I can capture the conversation. If necessary, we'll just do some amendments. I make a motion to use the same methodology that was presented. However, for staff to go back and look at the budget, cut the level of service as we had discussed in some areas, maybe you will find others, and come back with lower rates at a future meeting to be determined by the city manager between now and September, checking the date.
5th.
September 5th.
Second.
Mr. Garson, do you have a question on that?
Well, yeah, because you stated to cut the level of service, and unless they may not be able to, or they may not have to cut the current level of service. They may have to cut the level of service that was proposed. I just want that clarified, that we're not talking about level of service to date. We're talking about level of service that was
discussed.
to increase
That was
with the new
discussed.
proposal.
Methodology, that's the way I
All
understood the
right,
motion.
I just want to clarify it, that we don't go back and say, okay, we're not cutting the main roadways anymore like we had in 2015.
Well, the methodology previous was focused on the roads. This one's focused on the drainage. So I interpreted her motion to be toward that methodology.
The methodology.
Exactly.
City manager, that makes sense, Miss Julie, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
First.
Yes, sir. We would.
The second, before we.
No, I want to hear what she has to say, yeah. Oh, yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
did you second?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say it. I'm sorry. I
Go ahead, Ms.
apologize.
Julie.
So we would utilize the new methodology that you have here before you this evening, and the current level of service of, we'll just use the mowing, for example, on your vacant properties of 6 times per year for local, 8 times per year for arterials and collectors, that would stay the same.
I don't
We would-
understand why we
We would
cut
take a look at things like on vacant and developed, doing it 6 times per year and then twice a year in the center, and same for the arterials undeveloped, adding that in. That's an additional level of service. We would look at cutting that.
Right, cutting
Yes,
the
sir.
additional level of service.
Yes, sir.
In the new
Yes, sir.
methodology.
Yes, sir. But the existing level of service of 6 and 8, we would like to retain that. We would not like to reduce that.
Right.
Because that's very important. We
Do
keep
the
that.
best you can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
call the vote.
Call the vote, we had enough talk on this.
Yeah, go ahead.
We got to move on to our next meeting. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
And with
guys.
that,
Thank you,
this meeting
staff.
is
Thank you
adjourned.
for citizens.
Mr. Consultant, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. You can clap now.
How much before we come back? How much before we come back?
Let's take like 15 minutes. These guys
that'd be
plenty
good.
of time to get out there and get their
Smoke on?
smoke on.
Oh, yeah.